Welcome back to the pod. I'm a 27-year-old male, and every week I'm joined by a counterpart. This week, I'm joined by another 28-year-old female. Together, we share a nuanced view on discussions involving relationships, self growth, and perspective. Right off the bat, Maddie, you're in a happy, fulfilling relationship. So I'm immediately going to ask, do you have guy friends while in this relationship?
Yeah, of course. Of course I do. I'm not shied away from that. I think to me, I think it wouldn't be a very healthy relationship if I had rules on who my friends could and could not be. How do you feel about if you're dating a girl and she has guy friends? Does that bother you?
I've just had really bad examples most of my life on those females that have those guy friends that are 100% trying to hook up and just waiting for an opportunity. And I've had many friends that are girls that have already given those men chances once they go through something rough. So it's really nuanced. Again, everything we talk about is always nuanced, but I've had bad examples. But I can also see it depends on who that person is and what their personality is, like your partner. Do they have good boundaries with those friends, or do those friends have ulterior motives based on their history too? So that's my answer
Yeah.
on that.
I feel like my boyfriend, one of his best friends is actually a girl that he went on a Tinder date with. And they immediately were like, nah, I think we're friends. And they've been friends for years before I met him. And so even when I first started dating him, I would loop her in to be like, hey, I'm flying in to surprise him because we were like 1,000 miles away from each other when we first started dating. And she was like, okay, yeah. I was like, can you please hang out with him like all day and keep him preoccupied and distracted so that when I show up, he's like actually at the house. And she's like, yeah, like I'll keep him like movie day at his house. And like I was telling my other friends this, and some of my girlfriends were like, oh, you're cool with that? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, is she cute? And I'm like, she's actually a Playboy model. um, and people are like, yeah, that's everybody's response. Oh, and I don't know. It's not, if he wanted to, he would. And if he wanted to, I trust that we would have that conversation. That like he would be like, hey, I feelings changed about her and I feel some kind of way. And we would figure out how to tackle it. And I think the same goes for me, that if I find myself in a situation with a guy friend that the feelings change, then I would feel comfortable having that conversation with him and we would figure out what to do about it. But it's like also him and I have had this conversation a lot where we talk about, you don't get to make decisions for me by just deciding to do things with other people, because we decided we were a team and we're in this together. If at some point that changes, you let me know and we talk about it and then we decide how to tackle it. I don't know. It doesn't bother me, and I don't think it's weird for me to have guy friends because we have a really good trust with that. That we're just really honest about it, and also he's my best friend. So at the end of the day, I tell him literally everything, way too much. So it wouldn't. I don't know. It doesn't. I don't feel the need to have any guy friends that are closer than him, anyways. But I do have really good guy friends, and I talk to them about everything. So you're one of my guy friends.
That sounds like such a secure response. How did you even set that type of expectation and boundary and communication level in that relationship?
I don't know. There wasn't really like a time that we were like, "Hey, what do we do about this?" It just came up naturally. I feel like we talk about everything, so it's a very like we have a lot of communication, which is really reassuring. And so the topic came up eventually because we both have friends, and I think we both talked about how past relationships it had been a problem, and for me that just screams you want to control me, and I'm not comfortable with that, and I get to make those decisions. And if I have a guy friend that is really just trying to hook up with me, then he's not really my friend. He's somebody who has a crush on me. And that's a very different, it's like a one-sided relationship. And so that's not really my guy friend. And I get it. A lot of guys will answer that back and be like, every guy is just waiting for their opportunity. And I feel like, why are we doing men that disservice to think that you can't have fulfilling relationships and you can only think with your dick? Please, women are horny too. We need to start thinking better of men.
That is so true. I've had conversations with both men and women, and yes, they are both horny and they are both subjective to that. But yes, you're right. Men get more blamed for having that intention. That's a lot of trust you've built with your mans, but you also said he is your actual literal best friend. You tell him everything and you don't need a more best friend than him. I think that helps too. Would you say that has a bigger part to do with it? Or it's just everything you've learned from the past and not wanting to be controlling yourself, so you don't want him to be controlling either? Or maybe a mix of all.
Maybe a mix, but also I just think I have so much trust in knowing that I would be brave enough to have that conversation if anything ever changed. And I also know that he's so understanding that I have been in situations where I've had guy friends just kiss me, and I'm like, "Whoa, what hints was I giving you? Where did that come from? Whoa, what's we were hanging out. I did not know that's where this was going." That if a situation like that happened with one of my guy friends, and I came home and told my boyfriend that I was like, "Oh my god, guess what just happened? So and so tried to kiss me." He'd be like, "Oh my god, what'd you do? Are you okay? I'm so sorry. That's so frustrating." That he would understand and not jump to like, why were you kissing him? So I think it's just really it's just the trust that makes it easy.
Speaking of trust, those early conversations you guys seem to have had to build all this, did you ever talk about finances?
Yeah, we flow pretty easily into those conversations just because it's a part of life. And we live together. So especially when once we decided to live together, we were like, okay, here's a breakdown of these bills. What are you comfortable paying a month for rent? And when we were looking for a place, and we had to get into what's your credit score? What's all of this? And so we very much flowed into those conversations pretty easily. And for us, it's been really comfortable because we just talk about it all the time. If he wanted to log in and look at my bank account, I'm sure he could guess my password. And I would always tell him what's up with me, and he knows, and I know what's up with him on that stuff. I've not had that situation in past relationships. I was married previously and it was not like that, and it was uncomfortable. It was bad. So for me, that is definitely like a boundary that I'm like, I need to know, particularly if we live together, like what's going on with you and what's going on with me, because I don't need any rugs pulled out from underneath me and eviction notices on the door because all of a sudden you didn't have the money and you didn't tell me and enough time for me to help. So I feel like finances are something that have become a very much like everyday conversation now. And we just split everything. Like we're 50-50 on everything. So it's a pretty easy conversation to be like, you got this one, I get the next one. You get it's
Interesting.
pretty easy.
50-50 in the modern world. That honestly seems healthy. It seems great. But what if your parents heard about how you guys are going 50-50 and without even marriage and what that might mean for marriage? That's a new school way of thinking almost.
Yeah, but I mean, it's new school, and I guess my parents are pretty old fashioned, but they are not in the category of the man should do everything for you and financially. Um, and so I think, I mean, they've witnessed it. They came to visit like a couple weekends ago, and they were like, "Wow, this is so opposite of your ex." Because this was the first time my parents, like, my dad had met my boyfriend before, but my mom had not. So it was the first time they got to spend time with him. And so we were like going out to dinner and we were splitting everything, or we were like very much, okay, put this one on my card. And the next one's okay, hey, I paid for the last one. This one's on you. And my parents witnessed that. And I don't know that they feel that's a bad thing. I feel like it for me, it's a very healthy, good thing. And I think they see that because they saw how it went south when I had absolutely no control over the finances. This very opposite. What about you? From a guy's perspective, do you feel like you have to take on more of the brunt of a financial responsibility?
Half and half. The old school part of me definitely feels obligated to always take care of things, but I've my most recent dating relationship, we practiced the 50-50 method and it was extremely healthy, and then from time to time if she couldn't do something or if I couldn't do something, we it was an easy management. So that was really enjoyable. That felt healthy. That felt appropriate. But it still made me question, like as a modern day man, like how much of the old school stuff is there where I have big financial goals. So if that's the case, and if she doesn't match those big financial goals, do I still ask her to do 50-50? Do we rework the numbers? Do we do a ratio? Makes me think. A little bit of shame is there probably too. But yeah, it makes me debate what portion should it be, or should I take on the full force of it if I'm extremely financially off? Relative.
Do you feel like first dates, do you feel like the guy should always pay for the first date?
That one, yeah, that's a good question. That one, 100%. I do feel like the guy should always pay. But it's interesting as you asked that question, I put a scenario in my head. What if she was adamant that she pays half or we split it? That would be attractive, which is odd. It would be
I've heard that.
attractive.
I hear that from a lot of guys that they're like, "Ah, she reached for the check."
Yeah. What do you think about that? Because I think that'd be attractive, but and then is it sustainable? What do we do going forward? It's nice if she genuinely means it as a way to show her independence, and that's just who she is as a character. But what if she just saw something on TikTok to test a guy about, no, let's go 50-50, and she wants the old school stuff. So then it makes you want to perform a little bit too, instead of just allowing it to happen.
Yeah, that's hard for me to answer because I don't think I think the way a lot of women do about that stuff, because I'm always like, "No, I'll pay for my half." And a lot of times places that I wanna go on dates, like, I've picked the place, and I feel like whoever sets the date is the one that is saying, "I'm taking you on the date." So if that's the case, I think that's the person that should pay. But I have a lot of friends that are like, "Hell no, the guy should always pay." And I also have friends that like, have you heard about the sprinkle method
No,
on
what is
TikTok?
that?
It's man, I haven't brushed up on that in a while because I heard it and was like, "That's crazy, but good for you, ladies." But basically, it's just like sprinkling in, "Oh, that would be nice. I wish I could have wouldn't it be lovely if blah, blah," and it's like a method. I'm probably getting it all wrong, but basically, it's the idea that the man should be paying for everything, and it's a method to get men to pay for things, and so there was this girl on TikTok that was making videos and was getting, like, random strangers to buy her Prada bags, and it was working. It would, like, work so well that other women were like, "I'm gonna try the sprinkle method." And girls were, like, getting guys to do pay for all kinds of crazy things. And so I know that there's a lot of women out there that feel like, "No, they owe it to us. I am a prize and you're paying to spend time with me, and so if you wanna take me on a date, you pay for it." I don't really view it that way for myself because I'm like, "No, I want you to be my equal. This is not I am not like a little trophy that you're holding, and you're also not somebody that's, like, more capable of making money than me or whatever. Like, it's you're my equal, so it's just not fair to make the guy pay for everything, in my opinion. But not everybody feels that way. But I know it's a lot of times it's men that feel uncomfortable because I feel like society has pushed that a lot, that it makes men feel really uncomfortable when they're not the ones paying. And even waiters will, like, give me looks when I'm on a date at a nice place with my boyfriend and we put 2 cards down, they'll be like, 50-50, and we'll be like, "Yeah, just split down the middle." And they're
Yeah,
always
that's what
like,
scares me. Yeah, like the little judgment from the outside, and it's like, where's my opinion in this? Because that seems great, but where does my opinion fall? So I have to ask this. You have a lot of female friends. How many, what's the ratio of those females that think like you in this
"Mm."
scenario?
I guess that would require me having this conversation with more of my friends than I have had. Of my friends, my really close friends, they think the opposite of me. Like, my best friend is definitely on the other side of it where she'll go on dates and she'll be like, "No, this was a really great date because he gave me a time, he picked the place, he picked me up or sent a car for me, and we went to dinner, he paid for it, he ordered for me, he da 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 da, did all the things." And for me, if I went to a first date and a guy ordered for me, I would be like, "Please shut up, you don't know me. What? Let me pick what I want." And so we're very opposite on that, and I think a lot of my friends are very much opposite from me on that, but then I also have my few friends that are very liberal-leaning feminists like me. Not to say that my best friend isn't feminist, but you know what I'm saying. So I would say more disagree with me than agree with me. That's why I say take my opinion with a grain of salt coming from the woman's perspective.
Those two perspectives really help because I'm even trying to decipher which one would I lean towards for a lifelong partner. So the things you're saying, that sounds very attractive to me. But the old school way of things, that just seems to be like how you do it, right? Picking the time, place, picking up, or sending a car for a pickup. I never heard about ordering for her. That seems a little crazy. But the rest of it, I hear. So your perspective, you're showing such what to me sounds like a really healthy thing. So it's like I'm trying to even allow myself to have that opinion. Like, oh, okay, this actually sounds like this might be a lifelong partner way of accepting things and growing together. But yeah, that old school stuff is still there for some like it's a very confusion conundrum. So that's why I'm trying to even find out like, yeah, please have this conversation with your female friends and see what ratio are actually starting to think like that. Cause that is definitely not what would be popularized on TikTok. I shouldn't make such a blanket statement because then it inspires people to just stick to the negativity and not speak up on the positive, parts. Which I mean, me already calling this a positive aspect obviously shows where I'm leaning with you on this as well.
It very much spills into my more feminist mindset. And I just think the idea got developed because women couldn't have bank accounts a while ago in Texas. Pretty sure it was, I don't know the date, but it was in the early 80s that women finally got the ability to own property, have their separate bank accounts, and work job, like all of the things. Like we're the first generation that's fully getting to live our lives with that in mind. Like from childhood, our mothers telling us like you're gonna be able to get a job and own a house and do whatever you want with it. Like they didn't have the same thing preached to them while they were growing up because it was very different. And so I think those old school methods have been ingrained because this is pretty new. We haven't really gotten here yet. And so we have to start deciding, okay, now that women are making money and working side by side and owning houses and making investments, and I think it's fair that we're also paying for things as well. It makes sense to me, but
Yeah, it's an adjustment on modern times, and that's really what makes everything so confusing. The whole therapy realm, how long has that existed? Like maybe 100 years?
right.
So, stuff like that. There's so many confusing things in our era. A part of this podcast seems to answer everything I've been looking for, also, which is having those perspectives just talked out loud without any expectations on the other end, and hopefully other people watching and seeing the realizations. Like there'll probably be some men that are agreeing with this and that haven't been introduced to this different mindset either. And showing examples like this gives hope into a world where there's just new ideas and new opinions forming all the time. Everything is so new. The generation we live in, you and me, our age group, we're living in such changing times.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
are able to have this conversation with your friends, when would that conversation even arise? Like, how often do you spend time with your female friends?
A lot. I really value, especially with my best friend. Her and I went on a little girl date last night and had got dinner and went to a show. And we make it a point to do that at least once a week to spend time. And I have regular FaceTime dates with my other friends that are further away, or I feel like I really value that friendship time. And most of the time when I'm hanging out with my friends, we're having good conversations, things like this. So I'll definitely have to bring it up next time I'm hanging out with friends and be like, okay, I need your take on this so I can report back to the pod. But yeah, I feel like I really do value that. And I think that spills into making sure that work life balance provides some time for that. And it's important. It's a really important aspect of my life to maintain my friendships because that also helps me be a better me. It helps me be a better artist. It helps me be a better employee. It helps me be a better girlfriend, a better sister, and a better friend. I'm spending time fostering that, and that really helps me be a whole human and to just not feel like I'm facing the world alone. We need that community. Do you find yourself making enough time for your friends, or do you find it hard to do that? Because I know you're pretty busy. You were just saying before we got started all the stuff you've got coming up.
Yeah, my true friend group is pretty small, probably 4 or 5, and I live with one of them, so that makes it easy. You would think actually it makes it easy, but it doesn't. Like, even when he's home from time to time, we barely get time with each other. We just had a friend date, like a car date with him, and so that was, like, the most amount of time we've spent in probably the past 2 months together, and I live with him? The other friends are in East Texas. Whenever we get the chance, we make it happen, but we're always in touch socially. The other one's an hour away from me. We meet up every couple months now. And the same with the other friends. I was like, damn, I haven't seen you in 6 months. It's crazy. So that's how my friendship level is with my fellow men. I don't really look for a balance in that because it just happens. And I'm close enough to them in every other way that it works out for our level of friendship. But I'm curious, do you find yourself sometimes shaming yourself for how much time you're getting with your friends and wanting to have a better balance on that?
Not anymore. Before, when I was living in Texas, a lot of my friends were still out here in California. And so a lot of it was just phone calls and text messages and whenever we could catch up. And I had friends in Texas, but the relationship I was in didn't provide a lot of ability for me to be very close. I feel like there's a lot of wedges that were tossed in between me and some of my really close friends. And so I was really lonely and it really affected me. And I had a bad experience in Texas because of it because I struggled to maintain friendships. And particularly in the South, I found a lot of people had their friend groups that were like established. And I can't tell you how many times grown women would tell me, I don't need any more friends. And I'd be like, oh, harsh, but okay. And then I would have other friends that I would make. They would move to Texas and they would leave. And so I experienced the opposite of what I have now. And so when I moved back to California, I was like, I'm so excited, number one, to live by my best friend again, because her and I have always we've been very close throughout the years that I was in Texas. And so now that I'm back here, she's family. She's my emergency contact on everything. She has all my passwords, logins. If I die, she knows what to do. She's my dog's godmom and she's the bestie. And so I really value that time because I'm like, I have that now and I know what it feels like to not have that in my life. And so I do not feel guilty because it makes me a more functioning human. I can show up for work and be present and not be mentally weighed down by things that I could share with a friend. And so having a community to help me carry some of my burdens in life is really important. So I don't feel that guilt for it. No, not anymore.
Yeah, that's super healthy. It sounds like we're both happy with our friend group and how our times are dedicated to them. It just we go about it in two different ways. But what you said, having them to almost like dump on, or what word did you use?
To help carry the some of
Carry
the
the burden.
load. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
carry the
yeah,
burden.
yeah. That's beautiful. That's something that was a foreign concept to me too, that your friends are a good source for you to help share your burdens. I wrote down a list of those friends and I separated by each category. This friend is very different. I can tell him about these things and it'll probably work out. This friend, I can only hang out with him if I'm just looking for a good time to get my mind off, but mentally may not be the best option. And this other friend, this is all mental conversation. So it's like separating that, and then everything else falls into therapy. That
Yeah.
was one of the healthiest things I'd ever done for my life. Is that something like you do as well?
I think that happens pretty naturally for me that I have certain friends that I know I can go to for things. And yeah, it naturally, oh yeah, this is the friend that I always go to the movies with. This is the friend that I always go to when shit hits the fan and I need to cry. And my best friend is the one that I call when I want to go burn a wedding dress.
All right, we didn't get a chance to talk about it last week, but yeah, the friend. Okay, I didn't even know your best friend was a part of you burning your wedding dress. I'm assuming your
Of course,
boyfriend was a part of that process too.
actually, he couldn't come because
Huh.
I had work at the time, and I was like, "That's fine. This is a girls' activity.
It
We're
is a
gonna go
girl's
drive to the
activity.
beach and have a bonfire and burn all of the things." Of course, she was a part of it. She's my best friend. Like, it was really sweet though. We went and got our little picnic to have our bonfire at the beach and drove out. And there's a place out here called Dockweiler Beach, and they have a bunch of fire pits that just stretch across the beach. And so they're already there. And so you just go buy firewood and plop it in, basically. And so I was like, all right, I am ready. I have this box that's been sitting in my closet and I don't want it anymore. Let's do it. Let's burn all the letters. Let's burn everything and let's burn this wedding dress that literally I got so much crap for because it wasn't perfectly white and I could never really look at the dress the same way after. Why did I get married? I don't know, because he looked at the dress and was like, "It's not white." I was like, "That's your reaction to see me in a wedding dress? That was it? That's what you chose? It's off white. I'm sorry." Anyways, when it was ready, I was like, "I'm burning this. I'm burning it." We went had our little bonfire and toasted with some wine and lit that baby on fire, and it burned so satisfyingly. It was really great. It was a very good. Like, I opened up all of the each little letter and each little like memento that I had saved and was like, "This is from this," and da and she's fuck him, and I was like, "Burn it."
And to give
So
y'all context, after that extreme therapy session that she had that took away years of damage potentially, she came and did the podcast right after and dealt with some insane California traffic. So
yeah,
that's
I was
amazing.
very late. I was really thankful for your patience on that day because I was like, I thought I was gonna get back in 45 minutes, and then there was a show at the Hollywood Bowl, and it took me like 2 something hours to get back. It was rough.
No, it all worked out perfectly fine, but I love your dedication to things like this. Your parents, when they visited, how long were they here for?
Just a long weekend, so not very long, long enough to have them come and hang, and we got dinner and then hung out. It was really interesting experience, and I that was one of the topics that I was like, "Let's talk about this," because I
Yeah.
wanna know now about everybody's relationship with their parents as an adult, because my parents don't really come to visit me very often. I usually am the one going home to visit, primarily because I have a room and a place to stay, and then I can see my hometown friends as well, so it makes sense. But I realized when they came this time that I was like, I live such a different life than my parents. And for the first time, I felt like a magnifying glass was held up to that because they don't have deep conversations. They will dodge questions. And I didn't really notice it until I saw them talking to my boyfriend, who will immediately pull strangers into very deep conversations, like on accident. He's just the person that people will start spilling their guts to because he's just so easy to talk to and he's so curious and not judgmental. He just asks a lot of questions. And he was doing that to my parents, and my parents would literally my mom was like, "Oh, I guess it's just because 'cause I'm OCD." And he's, "Oh, that's interesting. Where do you think that came from? What triggers that for you?" Just wanting to better understand my mom and also, like, how to treat her and be kind to her if there's certain triggers he should know about. And we're, like, in the car while we're having this conversation, and there was a little pause before she started to answer, and my dad goes, "Oh my god, look at that Trader Joe's. That's the biggest Trader Joe's I've ever seen." My mom's, "Wow, that is a big Trader Joe's, honey. They even have a parking lot. Can you no Trader Joe's have parking lots?" And then and my boyfriend just looks over at me, like, I was driving, and I look at him just, "That's yeah, this is normal. Now you understand a lot more about me when I get uncomfortable with things." I will do that, and he'll have to redirect me sometimes, and I realized it was a habit that I had, and I feel like I've broken it because I enjoy having deep conversations, but it was interesting, and so now I've been asking everybody this question: do your parents do that? Do they dodge, or will they dive into questions and be open and have those conversations, or what does that relationship look like?
And that's the main thing you notice with your parents during their visit, right?
Yeah, honestly, that was my biggest takeaway because they didn't know they had nothing else that they really wanted to do either. We were really trying to we're in Los Angeles. We could do literally anything you wanna do, and they're like, "Oh," my dad was like, "Let's just go grab a beer," and I'm like, "Okay, sure," and talk about surface level things. I love my dad. I love my dad. He's got a lot of trauma I don't think he processed, and that's his right. That's his business, but it was interesting to see.
Yeah, and his trauma and your mom's trauma and whatever looped in their behaviors. Luckily, it seems like you had some pretty secure parents in the way they parented you, at least. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my parents did a wonderful job raising me and are exemplary parents. They are really wonderful at that. It just was interesting to see it as an adult.
Yeah. And a couple of things you got from them. How would you define that when you're deflecting? That would be it, right? That's something you got from them?
Yeah, or just I interrupt. I interrupt a lot because I that's just how conversations in my family flow. And my sister and I talk about it now because other people, like our significant others or other friends, are like, "You're interrupting me and it makes me feel like you don't want to hear what I'm trying to tell you." And we're like, "Oh no, that's not how I felt. I just get really excited." So I jumped in and then I noticed sometimes I will do it as a nervous tick and I didn't even notice until I saw it on my parents a couple weeks ago, and I was like, "Oh, I do that." My boyfriend was like, "Yeah. Why do you think I was calling it out when you were doing it?" I was like, "Oh, that runs a
Yeah.
little deeper than I thought."
Interesting. And like my answer, I will answer your question, but my answer is building on this. Did you ever have any resentment towards them for some of those things when you realized it? Maybe a partial amount?
I wouldn't say that resentment is the word for it. I think there's a little bit of sadness that I came to understand I'll never really get to know my parents very deeply, and they'll never really get to know me very deeply because there's a little bit of a wall, and they're very loving, like, they tell me they love me all the time, like, that's not really a problem. We just I think it was more of a, "Oh, that's unfortunate." Not really a resentment, but just I would love to have a deeper friendship with them, I think, now that I'm an adult.
Yeah, that kind of made me sad a little bit too. Cause yeah, that's the relationship with my parents too. It's impossible to get deep with them or really connect on that level. If anything, you'll hear the same stories you've heard before, but if you're really trying to understand them as human beings, it's so hard. and I have a language barrier with my mom. So the longer I go, like the more I age, the more I'm losing being able to speak my native tongue. I can understand all of it, but speaking it is tough. So I'm losing that. And then dad having the stroke, his speech being somewhat affected makes it really hard to connect with them. And just, yeah, it's been a rough point in my life, but I'm going to show you this one. And for any of the audience listening, this has actually helped me tremendously. There's a card game out there that's called Parents Are Human. And
I've heard about
wow,
this.
yeah, I bought it and I bought it in our native tongue because they had it in our native tongue, which is Bengali for anyone curious, which is such a small sub chapter of human beings relatively for popular languages, but they have it in our language and the translations are really accurate. And not only do they have it in writing, they have it for you to like pronounce in English too. So you can even try and say it back to them. It was
That's
so
so cool.
special. It really helped. So, of course, my parents being my parents, my dad was okay with having those conversations, and it's a little rough for him to continue conversations just with the stroke brain. But I got to know so much about him, so many new things from just the questions in those cards, and it made me connect with him so much more. I understand him way more as a human being. With my mom, that game, I had to force her to play it because the whole mommy issues for me that have happened. Yeah, extreme, like dismissive, avoidant type of personality, which is, of course, like my attachment style, for anyone curious, is fearful avoidance. So it's like a natural attraction, just a loop happening in your brain to keep you in what's comfortable. So with her, I just said, you don't play this game with me. I'm not coming home for 3 weeks. Like, I'm not visiting you guys for 3 weeks. Like, I'm ignoring you. I'll talk with dad, but I'm not coming home for 3 weeks. You play this game. It was late at night. She was tired. I'm like, you're going to answer at least 5 questions and then we can pause and we can try again. So she did. She's just resting. I pull out 5 cards and I know so much more about my mom through those 5 cards that she answered than I ever would have in any other way possible.
Wow. What are some examples of the questions that are on the cards?
It's funny. It can be in levels. It can be something that's just really simple and easy topic, all the way to something a lot more deep that may make them uncomfortable. It's funny, like the usual 5 we pulled out, one of the questions was, "What was your favorite food growing up?"
Hmm,
And that actually made it really connective because they would stop and pause and think, "What was my favorite food?" And then it goes into a complete childhood memory loop of what their favorite food was. And then just me being a podcaster, I interviewed them a little more. "Oh, why was it that food? What was it about that food that made it so special? Who made it? Was that mom's recipe? Did she ever teach you?" That's your answer. It seems like that's still your favorite food right now. Things like that allowed us to connect just off of such a simple question like that.
that's really cool. Yeah, because you know what? Thinking about it, I don't think I could answer that question. Like, I don't know that about my mom. Like, yeah, I have a game called We're Not Really Strangers, which is the same kind of concept. It's just not geared towards like parents, but it's like good questions. And we love bringing it out. My partner and I love bringing that card game out when we have friends over. Just as okay, let's all pick a card and go around and ask, and everybody answer the questions. And it does help you just learn things that like maybe wouldn't have naturally flowed out of a conversation. And so those things are really good. It's
It's
a good way to
yeah,
jump off.
it's crazy
Yeah.
that a card game can do that because in a way, when we're trying to connect with people that maybe we don't have too much connection with, we're probably both already in a triggered state. There's just imbalances, and then both parties have different intentions. Simplifying it to just a card game that they've already done the psychological research and it's been proven to work. I'm not sponsored by any means with my little podcast, but I would really say if it wasn't for that game, I'm not sure when my mom and I would have ever connected and what I'd be even able to ask her. To be honest, I not that long ago, probably just a couple months ago, it was really hard for me not to resent my mom. And even when I was being assertive with her, like, "You play this game or I'm not talking to you or coming to visit you for 3 weeks." Like, the amount of resentment that was there, but at the same time, I wanted to have something with my mom before she died because she's at high risk for horrible things with the way she behaves in life, and she's young, but she's probably going to have a stroke in her life too at some point. It's just how unhealthy she is mentally, like stress-wise. So I
Yeah.
really wanted that to happen. I really wanted to connect with my mom before she passes. It might even be 20, 30 years, but I'm sure the older she gets, the less I'll be able to connect with her. So it's one of those things, like even for me, you could end up in a car accident tomorrow, or you can end it yourself in the next 10 seconds. Your next 10 breaths aren't promised. So with those things in mind, I ask myself, would I want some context on my mom? Would I want to be find a way to not be so resentful towards her just for myself? And that led me to buying that card game. And we'll play more of it. We'll connect more. But already, just after asking those questions, getting to know her a little more, and as time has passed since we've played that game and I've gotten to know her, I have so much more empathy for her and her childhood and her as a human being because I found out so many things that I'm like, man, you poor thing. You definitely didn't have easy access to YouTube to learn things and your algorithm feeding you things to get better during heartbreaks. You had such little control of your life, especially in a third world country. There's definitely no therapy to catch you at a right age. There was no good friends around you. There was just no resources. And she was still going through, we were going through probably extreme generational change, but so was she in the 80s or 70s or 60s, whatever it was. That's, it gave me a lot more empathy for them.
Yeah, and it does make you realize too how different our parents' generation is. I don't know how old your parents are, but my parents are in the baby boomer generation, and they just were not given the tools to even express things the way that we have been. And I think my parents, they've always been pro therapy, but they've never really gone themselves. My mom has a little bit, but my mom is very much like she keeps it in therapy. And you have to, she'll open up, but you really gotta dig at her to get her to. And my it's a really interesting dynamic that I noticed between the two of them is they have a really wonderful relationship, my parents do, in the way that they like protect each other from trauma responses. And so when something starts to get deep, the other one will jump in with a distraction. And I think they do it without even noticing. I think it is like an innate response because they are very connected and they've been married for 30 something years now, 30 more than 35. And they've been like they've known each other since they were 12 years old. So they are like very connected in that way. And yeah, after they visited, my boyfriend and I were talking about it and we were like, it's wonderful that they have that together because they're comfortable with that level and they both have some trauma that I don't think they ever really want to dig into. And it's nobody can force anybody to deal with trauma. And who am I to say that they have to? They've made it this far in life and that's up to them. But it was interesting to watch that dynamic because I have fought really hard to not be closed off. And so I was like, I learned that asking questions is prying and I shouldn't do that and it's rude. And then I grew up and became an adult and was like, no, that's how we connect with people. That's how we turn acquaintances into friends. So, yeah, it is interesting. I feel like a lot of my friends have had the same response that you have. That is, yeah, my parents, same thing. And I've also learned that almost all of our parents had awful childhoods. Almost all of our parents had something that was like pretty traumatic happen to them, and they're just floating through life. And I'm like, okay, yeah, my childhood really wasn't traumatic at all. And even still, I try to process things and work through that. I just had far less to work through than my parents. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a lot less anxiety inducing when you start letting go of the ideas that we need to fix our parents or get them to be open and not deflective so that we can also learn how to not be deflective, right? It's almost like trying to fix them so we can work ourselves or something like that. Why do you think it is that we want our parents to open up and give us more context to heal themselves? Why do you think we want that?
I think two reasons. I think the genuine want and desire for connection from them. But I also think this is speaking for myself, so I can't assume this of others. But for me, I'm always going to want my parents' approval. I'm always going to want them to be proud of me. And they are. My parents are proud of me for a lot of things and they don't shy away from telling me that. And I'm thankful that a lot of people don't have that relationship with their parents. So it's not like I crave it because I don't have it, but it's something that doing self-work is really hard. And I almost want the recognition for that. Like, I want them to understand because I'm so proud of myself for the way that I've gotten to know myself and a lot of the hoops that I have jumped through to arrive comfortable in my body and my own feel safe in my own mind. Like, it wasn't easy. And it's a continuous thing that I have to spend time on. And I just feel like my parents don't understand that. And I want them to. And I also know what a relief it is to feel that way. And I love my parents so much that I want them to feel the relief from a lot of burdens that I carried a lot of things just of like like shame and self-doubt and like all these things, and then I know what it's like to feel that I have the ability to go, "Nope," and take that off. That I want them to be able to do that, and I want that for them. And it's something that I would connect with them about once if they decided to go on the same thing that like you and I like go through therapy and do some self-work and learn more about yourself and strengthen that relationship. Then they'll be like, "Wow, you have grown so much as a human." And want them to be able to see that growth because 'cause they've watched me grow up, but I feel like they haven't really watched me I have a desire for that.
That's beautiful. You have a desire for them to feel the joy you felt going through that journey yourself. Yeah, completely makes sense. Now, in a way, does this kind of relate to love bombing a little bit?
A little. I feel like a lot of us learned that from our parents, and
Yeah.
then we learn a lot of the things we carry into dating and relationships because our parents are the first people we learn to, but I definitely feel like it does because then it's like, boom, distraction. Have you experienced love bombing? Has that
Yeah,
been,
yeah.
something that you do or something you've had happen?
As we were talking about parents and almost in a way wanting that for them, I think about some of the ways I've treated them, which was trying to make them okay so that I feel okay. And it's
Mm.
weird. That pattern I really feel like is related to the love bombing. I was actually the one love bombing people, and I never knew that.
Ah.
Yeah, I never knew that it was me love bombing others. Incessant texting, being really close on a first date, even wanting physical intimacy almost right away. And then after I either get it or it all happens, not all the time, but I back up a little and it's not as meaningful 3 months down the road, which honestly, 3 months is when things should really build up into all those things anyway, right? More consistent texting, you can rely on this person, there's more frequency, there's a better schedule, all those things I'm starting to learn that should happen over time instead of throwing it all in and immediately getting emotional reassurance in everything, which it's like drugs. It works really well immediately. And then you suffer the consequences afterwards. And it's usually not somebody else suffering, but usually you, and then other people can fall a part of it also. So it turns out the whole love bombing thing, like a lot of women are upset with men for doing the love bombing. I'm sorry, but I am someone that actually did it without even knowing. And once it was brought to my attention, I was like, holy shit, like that actually calmed me down. Oh, I'm doing this for myself and it's not fun for anyone else to even go through.
How was it brought to your attention? Did a partner point it out or through therapy?
A little bit through therapy, but it wasn't clear to me until the last podcast I did recently with someone. Oh, yeah, with our other co host, Amanda. And it's funny, I didn't even really it hit me while we were talking about it, but when I started editing the podcast, and everyone, you should watch the last episode with Amanda. When I started editing, I was like, "Oh my god, this speaks to me." Like this incessant texting, I still wanted that even after all the healing, and I feel like I'm a pretty healthy person with others in partnerships now. But then I look back at like how recent what did those things happen? It wasn't that long ago that I was the one initiating insane amounts of texting back and forth, wanting to get physically close immediately, all the above, like all the love bombing characteristics. And it's weird. I never thought how harmful that could be to somebody else. I just immediately thought, man, that's harmful to me. It's like love bombing, like everybody dies through the bomb. Everyone's a victim of that bomb. Yeah, it got brought to my
Yeah.
attention. Now, I'll be fair to myself and say I avoided doing it before having that conversation with Amanda. So maybe a partial portions of therapy and then just learning about relationships. There was a girl I was somewhat interested in, but not really. And she was looking for more emotional connection and she was willing to give up physical intimacy for that. And that's basically like friends with benefits type of thing that just describes that situation. And we made it as far as making out. But after that, I went home and said, what type of man am I? Do I want to take her physical intimacy in exchange for her thinking she'll get emotional intimacy out of me? Because even though it's a friends with benefits, and I made it very clear to her that we're not compatible and it's not going to work out, but maybe we could have fun. I went back home and said, should we even have fun? Is that even fair? So in that scenario, I let her know, hey, I'm actually telling you directly, which most human beings will never do with each other. But I just saw a video on YouTube
Mhm.
and that was making me think I should directly tell you I do not plan on giving you more than anything other than a casual friendship. And that made me feel better just to let her know that. And of course, I was telling Amanda, of course, I wanted my dick sucked, but I wasn't willing to
That
sacrifice my integrity for it anymore. Not anymore. Who knows? I might still get caught in that trap, right? Maybe the attraction level is higher. Who knows? But it is something I'm definitely aware of, and it's really hard for me not to be aware of it anymore.
it's hard not to though sometimes. I'm curious if because your attachment style, fearful avoidant or fearful attachment, you said?
Fearful avoidant.
And
Yeah, it's a
and
combination of
fearful
both
avoidant.
dismissive and anxious.
And that to me goes hand in hand with somebody who would love bomb because it is you're anxious, you want a response out of them, you wanna know that they like you and you need them to tell you, and if I'm constantly texting them and getting a response from them, then I know that they're in on this, and it doesn't give me any time to question it because I'm constantly getting that reassurance, and then once you get it and you know that they're in it, it's, "Oh, whoa, why do you like me so much? That's what's wrong with you that you like me?" And it
Exactly.
creates, like, this whole it has nothing to do with the other person, but then the other person is left being like, "Whoa, why they all what did I do wrong?" They, like, suddenly stopped texting me a million times a day, and then it throws everybody into a loop, so then they start being like, "Okay, I guess they're mad at me," and then they push back, and then you it's like causes a whole big drama, and I feel like I experienced that while being in a relationship going through phases where we would like fight and then we would make up and it would just be like love bomb like now I'm getting all your attention, now you've quote unquote fixed all the problems that we were fighting about, and then a couple weeks goes by and nothing, like gone again, vacant, not participating in conversations with me, not wanting to be hanging out and all these things, and it was just like this constant loop, and I started to recognize that, and when I started dating my now partner I was like, are we love bombing each other? Because we were just, like, constant, and he had a situation before me that, like, really left him heartbroken because this girl had just, like, absolutely shattered, like, she just love bombed him and then dipped and, like, completely disappeared, and he's like, Where did she go?" And he's actually wrote a really great album about it that will come out later, but and it, like the whole thing, I'm, like, scared because you just had that happen, and I just went through this, like, toxic cycle, and I'm scared, like, we're repeating this with each other, and we talked about it a lot, and I was like, "No, I just wanna talk to you a lot." Like, I'm not I know I feel comfortable that you still like me if you're not calling me, and as time went on, we never really changed that level of communication. We're still, like and now we live together, so it's a little easier to be very communicative, but it's tough, and it's a tough cycle to even recognize because sometimes you're like, "Am I just excited about this person or am I doing it again?" It's hard.
I think that's the whole emphasis of this podcast is like neither of us will ever give you advice on any episode that I do. As long as like me, Amanda, Maddie, we're not here to give you advice, but we both just admitted that we've either love bombed or we've been suspects of it, suspicious activities, or our partners have
Yeah.
been the ones doing it or have had it done to them. And it's really devastating, but it's weird. It seems to be like it's not intentional to either harm someone else or ourselves. But then you see all these YouTube videos about toxic traits and you hear the love bombing one. Of course, I never wanted to click on the one that said fearful avoidant. These are your toxic traits, right? I definitely don't want to click on that. Don't want to see it. I was like, nope, I create my own identity. That's when you claimed, oh, I have full control of my identity. I was like, no, do not call me toxic. And the one thing we definitely don't want is to be viewed with toxic traits. But this love bombing thing, wow, was it eye opening. Even in my last relationship, I'm looking back at the ways I'm upset at her for love bombing. But now I'm looking back, knowing that I've had this trait, I'm looking back at that relationship, realizing, oh my God, every time we got distance and it turns out she would accept my love bombing. She would accept my love bombing and then she would love bomb back and it would be great. And then, of course, 3 days goes by and we're back to the whole, being ghosted or we're remembering what we wanted from the beginning and we just separate. But it's such a vicious loop. Like, how do you not want that reassurance? How do you not want that validation? All of that has to be fixed outside of the relationship, is what it looks like in order to avoid love bombing.
I think I think it's really self-security. If you feel comfortable knowing that I really like this person, but if they disappear tomorrow, my world's not gonna shatter, I will be fine because I know how to take care of myself and I don't need this other person to do that. So it's okay if they take a while to text me back. It's fine. But that's a hard place to land to get there and feel that amount of comfortable because then you might think that you feel that way and then you meet somebody and you're like, oh, I need them. So it's tough. I
Maddie
feel like
and
we're
I,
all still working on it.
yeah, we are. And Maddie and I wish you the most luck in landing on that hard place as we are still going through it and trying to land on that hard place. And a part of us feels like we have. So if you'd like to continue the journey with us and landing in that hard place, going through these things, please share with friends that you think would enjoy learning and growing together in this age generation, or even if you're younger or older. If you see value in kind of growing with us, it'd be really nice if you shared this podcast and helped us grow a little bit more too. That's all we've got for you. Maddie, you got any other messages for him?
Yeah, I think our audience should love bomb us by leaving a bunch of reviews. And then you never have to leave any more again after that. It's just a fun experiment. We should try, see how it goes.
Experiment. Okay, go for it. Prove us wrong.